Inside Chicago Government. chigov.com.
Hi, I'm Dave Glowacz. Welcome to an election 2016 special about voting for judges on the Cook County ballot. And I'm here with my friend, Ray Vela. And Ray asked me recently, what is it with all these judges on the ballot and how do you vote for them? So Ray and I thought we'd sit and go through one way to look at the selection of judges, and that's by looking at Bar Association recommendations that are publicly available, and we're going to go through them and explain how you can use Bar Association evaluations to help you in your November 2016 ballot. First of all, since Ray and I live very close together, we have the same ballot. Do you know how to get the ballot online?
No.
There is an organization called the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners, and they have a website called chicagoelections.com. And if you go there, going to the ballot area, your ballot, and you can display the ballot and you can download it. So what I've done is I've printed ours out. You stick in your address, and it'll give you your entire ballot.
Oh, this is very helpful.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known this before.
Yeah, and you can do this for any election in Chicago. So you could always...
Chicago Board of Election Commission?
Yeah, commissioners. Right. Yeah, so it's chicagoelections.com. So this is really useful, not just for this election, but for any election that comes about. You can go to that website, plug in your address. It'll give you the entire ballot. You can print it out if you want to and take it with you into the polling place. So I have our ballot here, and it starts out with, not surprisingly, the president and senator and comptroller, all these other things. And then it's not too long into it, on the second page, that we get into judges. And if we look, page after page after page of judges, there are, on this ballot, for our particular ballot, there are 75 judge positions for us to vote for. So it's kind of out of control, but we're going to try to control it a little bit here today. So one of the things that we notice when we look at the judges is there are two kinds of judges to vote for. The first set of judges that we vote for show that they're vacancies. So they're judges who had, for whatever reason, because they retired or they moved to another position to a different judgeship, they left. And so these are people who are running for their position. And if we look down all these positions, we see that it says for each one of them, vote for one, but there is, on our ballot, there is only one person to vote for on all of these. On other people's ballots, there might be more than one person running, but if we look at all of ours, there's only one to vote for. So what's going on here is that these people back in February ran in the primary against the Republicans, that's in some cases, and the Democrat won. and there's no one else on the ballot. There's no third party on the ballot. So each of these people have no one to run against them. So what happens in these cases is that if nobody votes for them, they still become the judge because they're not running against anyone.
Okay. So they're going to win regardless.
Yeah. So in some sense, you could choose not to vote for any of these guys and not waste your guys or gals and not waste your time because they're going to get in anyway, But if you wanted to go through the exercise of, trying to find out if they're recommended, you could do what we're going to do, is to look at the recommendations. So those are the vacancies. Then the second part of the ballot for judges is judicial retentions. So these are people who are already judges, and their term of judgeship is up. And in Illinois, when the term is up, they have to go before the voters. They have to go on the ballot, and the voters have to vote for either yes or no. Should they stay a judge? Should they be retained? And the way the Illinois law works is that if less than 60% of the people who vote say yes, they don't get retained. They're booted. So these votes do matter here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in Cook County, there is a history of no judge running for retention ever getting booted. So even though, as we'll see, that some judges are not recommended by just about everybody who does recommendations, voters don't get the message. So that's one of the reasons I think this is important, what we're doing, to look at who's recommending judges don't be retained so we can end up voting no. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So let's start with the other ones, the ones who are going to get into office regardless, the ones who are filling vacancies. We're going to look at who's making the recommendations. So we're going to look at an organization, a website called voteforjudges.org. On the voteforjudges.org site, you look at the top for judicial evaluations and results. Click on that. And then within the text on that page, you'll see something that says 2016 general election results. You click on that, and it will, depending on what kind of device you're on, either download a PDF file or it will display. And what voteforjudges.org is, it's a private group that has gotten about a dozen bar associations. And these are not tavern owners. These are actually groups of lawyers, bar associations. And these bar associations have decided to weigh in on every judge running for election to make recommendations on them. And here's a list of the bar associations. And they're generally demographically identified. So there is a Hispanic one, there is an African American one, there is a African American Women's Bar Association, there is a Women's Bar Association, there is the Hellenic Bar Association is Greek, lawyers of Greek descent. There is a Lesbian and Gay Bar Association, Puerto Rican Bar Association. So there's a whole, each of these are not associated with any political party. They're just, in some cases, like I said, demographically aligned with the constituency that is named in their title. And each one of these goes through all of the judges, and they make a recommendation, showed here, whether they think the judge candidate is qualified, or in some cases, there's three sort of red flags that telling you that they don't like this person, and that is the recommendation: not qualified, not recommended, or this one is not evaluated through no fault of the candidate. In other words, maybe they couldn't get their act together on that candidate and they have no evaluation. But these two, not recommended and not qualified, are the red flags. Does that make sense?
Sure. So this group is the Alliance of Bar Associations. It's part of voteforjudges.org, or?
Voteforjudges.org, yeah, is the organization that compiles the recommendations from each of the 11 bar associations. And as we'll see, each one of them, it gives us each one of their recommendations.
Okay.
It doesn't combine them into one. It shows you all of them.
Okay.
So each one of these has a different way of deciding how to recommend. Some will send a survey to all of their member lawyers. Essentially says, all right, for this particular judge candidate, if you've had experience with that candidate, either being in their courtroom or, as a lawyer, what do you think about them? And they collect the surveys, and that's how they determine whether there's a recommendation. Some of them actually interview the candidates, bring them before them. So each one has a different way of coming up with their recommendations. Are we good so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how that works. So let's look at the first judge recommendation done by the bar associations. We see it's a lady named Eileen O'Neill Burke. And if we look at our ballot, there she is. She's running for a vacancy. She's unopposed. And what does it say about her? The bar associations are saying recommended, qualified, highly recommended by the Lesbian and Gay Bar Association.
Oh.
So for Ms. Burke, they're all saying no red flags, go for it. So if we wanted to, then we could take on our paper ballot that we're bringing into the polling place with us, we could say, yes, we're going to vote yes for her because all these folks say thumbs up.
Perfect. So I consider myself a little more left-leaning progressive, I would like to say. So I just want to make sure that that some of these people that are getting vetted share my values, which I know with interpretation of the law, it's supposed to be objective, but we look at Citizens United and, things that just make me cringe. So should I, what's the best way? Like maybe like you were saying, I would think that the Lesbian and Gay Bar Association, I think that they would definitely be more of a progressive,
You would think.
I would like to think. So, I mean, is that kind of how you go about? Are any of these more conservative leaning groups? That's kind of my question
I off the top of my head, don't know. And as a journalist, I'm hesitant to make those characterizations. But what you could do is could go to the website of each one of these and learn about why, like what is the Hellenic Bar Association look like they're espousing? Do they want, for example, make sure there's a souvlaki in every courtroom? I'm joking, of course. Those are the Greeks.
Oh, okay.
And it might give you some indication of what their disposition is.
Okay.
Another thing you could do that's if we step outside of the Bar Association recommendations is you could actually go and look at bios of each of the judges. And you can go to this website that's on our screen right now to get bios of each one, and you could use that for your recommendation. And as you can see on this website, there's a candidate profile for each one. And if you wanted to go through the trouble for each one and do that, you could. In this case, we're just looking at what all these different kinds of lawyers think. And if there's something going on with one of these candidates, in other words, they're doing something, they seem to be like a bumbler, we're going to see in a minute that's going to be really obvious because all of these associations are going to say, whoa, not good.
Okay.
So for this first person, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
So for this person, Ms. Burke, we didn't have that issue. So we go on to the second person, Bertina Lampkin, also filling a vacancy. We see similarly, she got well qualified instead of qualified by the Chicago Council of Lawyers. And a couple of the organizations said, yeah, she's really good, highly qualified, highly recommended. So if we wanted to, we could go to her on our ballot and say, yep, we're gonna vote for her because all the associations have done that. So we could go through each one and do the same thing. We could look at John Fitzgerald Like Jr., also qualified, yes, there. Rosanna Fernandez, recommended, qualified, recommended, yes. Allison Conlon, a lot of women on this ballot. Recommended, qualified, highly recommended. So I would put a yes there perhaps. Alex Gillespie, recommended, qualified.
So qualified would be more like the C, like a average, maybe?
Yeah, as opposed to, so the three qualified ones are either highly qualified, well qualified, qualified, or not qualified. So I guess you might look at that as A, B, C, and F.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. And continuing on, much of the same. Gallagher, McHugh. Now we come to our first one where one of the bar associations says, in red, not recommended, Brendan O'Brien. And if we look, we'll see that's the Lesbian and Gay Bar Association, where, for example, the Chicago Council of Lawyers says Mr. O'Brien is well qualified. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to, you could go to the Lesbian and Bar Association website and see if there's information about why they decided not to recommend that person. So if lesbian and gay issues are important to you, this might be a judge candidate that you would not want to vote for. So that's, but notice the Hellenics.
Sure. Yeah, that was exactly my question.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah, for Mr. O'Brien might be a question mark for us. So continuing on, the next two, also no red flags. Then we come to Mr. Duffy. Now, Mr. Duffy, we find there are 3 bar associations who don't recommend him. The Chicago Council of Lawyers says not qualified. The Hispanic Lawyers of Illinois say not qualified. And the Women's Bar Association of Illinois says not recommended. So for whatever reason, there are 3 associations that don't recommend Mr. Duffy.
That is very interesting. But then who is recommending him? The
Puerto Ricans,
the lesbian and gay are recommending. DSL. Oh, that's the Decalogue Society. BW, Black Women Lawyers. Okay. So this would require maybe going to all of their websites just to try to figure out why.
Yeah. Is there a particular thing that Mr. Duffy has done that that ticks these people off? That makes them think that he's not qualified. So that's interesting. It's food for thought, or food for research, perhaps. Continuing on, we have a couple more that seem no red flags till we get to, look at this one.
Oh my
Rhonda
God.
Crawford. Every single bar association has said
single one.
Not recommended. And this is a writing. She's being opposed. Well, this is a woman that famously, quite recently, was in training at the Markham Courthouse. And she was training under Judge Turner. And Judge Turner said, all right, what we're going to do, Ms. Crawford, is we're going to have you put my robe on now and sit in my seat and hear a few cases, which is against the law. And Ms. Crawford has, in fact, been indicted by the Cook County State's Attorney for essentially this judge impersonation. And all the counsels said, can't recommend her. So she's still on the ballot, though, despite being under indictment. And if the State Board of Elections allows her to continue to be on the ballot, she can be elected. But there is an alternative candidate.
It says
Ahmed.
write in, though. That means that her name will not be there. You have to write her in?
It appears that way, yeah. So on the touch screen, that might be interesting. I don't know how that works on the touch screen. Like, you just key it in? I don't know. I've never had to do that. It'll be interesting. But we see that Ms. Ahmed is recommended, and in fact, highly recommended by a couple of the associations. So that's an interesting one.
And then right below there is a woman that nobody recommends, but there are no alternatives. So that's really depressing. So
if it is depressing because it's a vacancy, and she will be seated. Now, something to remember that eventually Ms. Jackson, if she continues to be a judge, at some point when her term ends, she is going to be up for retention, and that will be the yes/no thing, in which she has to get 60% of the voters to say yes, and then at that point she could potentially be booted, but not at this point. But you might not want to vote yes for her regardless. So then we have the rest of the candidates, pretty straightforward. And then we continue on. We see nothing that raises red flags anywhere until we get to a contested race. Here's where there are actually there are two alternatives. So there's no presumptive winner. The Democrat is rated not recommended or not qualified by 4 of the bar associations, Ms. Mahoney, whereas Mr. Allegretti the Republican is recommended by all the bar associations. One of the things that's good to point out is the bar associations are rating all the judges that are running throughout Cook County. Mm-hmm. But our ballot only contains judges that are running in our area. Okay. So not all the judges that appear in the recommendations are on our ballot. Okay. So for this one that we just saw, the one where
we won't be able to vote anyways. We won't be able
to vote for it. So we took a look, said nope. This is in a particular area called the 12th Subcircuit, which is not in our or election precinct.
So to clarify for me and viewers, we should probably print this sample ballot after putting your address in, and it'll show you exactly what we'll see. And this can be your notepad or outline that we can make notes next to, and we can bring that in.
Yeah, and as you've seen, what I've done with my ballot is I've just simply next to this is the ballot.
Okay.
So to each one that I want to vote yes for, I put a yes. Like this one is question mark, so I might not vote on that one. And I would just go through each one and put a mark.
Okay. Last time I went to, from recommendations of friends and groups, just progressive websites, and I went to a couple of them and wrote down names and took that list of names. So then I would just try to match up names, but on people that I didn't know, I just left it blank. And they didn't comment on any judges, so there were a lot of blanks that I left on my.
I find this extremely helpful, and so few people apparently use it because, as we'll see now, as we get into the retentions, there's a place to actually affect whether or not these people are going to be retained, and quite often they are, even though there's cases where they're not recommended. So let's take a look at a couple of those. We're now in the retention part of the ballot, and this is, as I said, for current judges whose terms are up and need 60% of the people who are voting for them to say yes. And these are also appearing on our Bar Association recommendations. So let's take the first one on our ballot, Judge Sophia Hall. This is a little more straightforward. In this case, the bar associations are simply telling you yes or no, whether they should go. And if we just eyeball this very quickly, we see that in almost all cases, based apparently on the judges' performance during their course of their term, they have performed well enough that the bar associations have said yes. The first one that we see a problem with is the second one on our ballot, Erwin Sulganic. The Cook County Bar Association says no. So if we wanted to find out why, we could go to their website and perhaps they'll tell us why.
It's funny, though, because I'm such a skeptic of city politics. If they don't want him, sometimes it makes me want the person.
So you might want to vote no on a bunch of these then.
No, I'm joking. But, there's a little skeptical with some of these things.
But if we just took the majority, we could simply say yes on all of these. The next time we experience that is with Mr. Mackey, who also appears on our ballot. He got a no from the Lesbian and Gay Bar Association. So we might want to explore what's going on there. Continuing on, we see that Mr. Ford, he got a no from the Chicago Council of Lawyers. And then Mr. Lynch, Daniel Lynch, got a no from the Chicago Council of Lawyers and the Illinois State Bar Association, but yes from all the others. Mm-hmm. And as we continue, we see this pattern repeating. There's one there for Mr. Dunford. There's one there for Ms. Bernstein. But by and large, mostly recommended yes.
Are all judges either Democrat or Republican, or are there any independent or third party?
When judges are being elected to a vacancy, then they run in a primary under a Democratic Party, as we saw. But when they run for retention, notice there's no party affiliation. When they run for retention, they don't have to show a party affiliation.
Okay.
We get to the end of the retentions, and we see, again, there are just a few judges running for retention who get a no suggestion from the bar associations. And it just seems that the Lesbian and Gay Bar Association has some standards that several of the judges are not meeting, based on the fact that they're saying no in a number of cases. And that's pretty much it. That takes us to the end of our ballot. Based on the Bar Association recommendations, we could mark up the entire ballot that way.
Okay. And can you do this for primaries too?
Yes.
So this ballot is just a general ballot for the next upcoming election. It'll be one ballot for all. But for the primaries, you have to list, are you Democrat, Republican, and then they will still show you a sample ballot for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you pulled a Republican ballot for the primary, you would see almost no judges. for our particular precinct because there are very few people who run as Republicans in the ward and the precinct that we're in because we're in the heart of Chicago. We're in the middle of Chicago.
This just works for Cook County, like locally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very helpful, though. I think I will do this. There's still work involved. It's not, you know what I mean? But I still think it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I think it beats going into the polling place without having a clue. And the fact that we're given this opportunity to choose, I like to think that if we can use the resources available to us to make some level of informed choice.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Listeners, we always welcome your questions and comments and suggestions for future interviews. You can get to us via email on contact@chigov.com. Look for us on Twitter at CHIGOVT and on Facebook at InsideGov. I'm Dave Glowacz. Thanks for watching.